Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Angela. I am a full-time voiceover artist and audiobook narrator, and through my channel I share with you some of the techniques and tips and tricks that I use every day in my own voiceover business, as well as answer your questions about voiceover and audiobook narration. And I wanted to address today a question that I get about narrator equipment. If you're narrating audiobooks, what do you need to get started narrating audiobooks? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into it. And because I get this question a lot, I have a lot of gear that I either have used or recommend on my website, voiceoverangela.com. If you go to VO Gear, I have a whole page of equipment that I have either used myself or gear that I have heard a lot of great things about from either other users or people that I've personally worked with. So they're also items that I recommend to get you started in voiceover or audiobook narration. It takes the same equipment to get started. And one of the most important things to consider if you want to narrate audiobooks is, of course, the microphone. Now, it doesn't have to be, in the very beginning, it doesn't have to be, a Sennheiser 416. It doesn't have to be a super expensive microphone. It can be a USB microphone. It could be a Blue Yeti or a Nano, or it could be any one of these on my site here. These all range in different prices depending on what you're looking for. But there's nothing wrong with starting out with a USB mic. If the price is right and if you have the ability to test it out before you buy it, that's always recommended. However, there's not really a microphone that's going to make you sound completely terrible, right? They have very subtle differences in the way that they bring out certain aspects of your voice, but they're not going to make you sound horrible if you choose the wrong one. A microphone is a microphone. They're built pretty much the same way if you think about it. I mean, relatively speaking. But all of the microphones on my website here are recommended to get started with, and that is very important. But there's also two different types of microphones that I should make you aware of if you're unfamiliar. There's a USB mic, which I was just talking about, and a USB mic is basically a plug-and-play mic. There's no other hardware needed. You basically take that USB plug that it comes with and plug it into your computer. You may need to download the software for your computer to understand and run the recording software that's within the mic to convert the signals into your computer. You know what I'm talking about. But that's about it. It's basically plug and play. And the other type of microphone is called a XLR mic, which is like a dynamic condenser mic, that sort of thing. They come with a 3-pin plug that needs to go into a audio interface. And what that audio interface does, and then that audio interface plugs into your computer. And what that audio interface does is it converts the signal from your microphone to a signal that your computer can understand. But the XLR mics they tend to have a more richer tone, a cleaner input, like there's less signal from the mic. There's a lot of different types of XLR mics. This one that I have here, I don't know if you can see it, but this is my Sennheiser 416. This is my second XLR mic. My first one was a Rode NT1A, I believe, and that was a great microphone to start out with. I chose this one, side note, I chose this one in particular because there's a lot of ambient noise in my recording studio. And because this is what they call a shotgun mic, it only focuses or picks up what's directly in front of it, not so much what's behind it or to the side of it, which of course would reduce the noise from getting into my recording. It just picks up my voice because I'm directly in front of it. Side note. So for audio interfaces, these don't need to be super expensive either. A Scarlett Solo would do from Focusrite. Let me show you here. This is a Focusrite Scarlett Solo. It is meant for one XLR mic to be plugged in. There are other options. Say if you wanted to podcast, there is the one right next to it here, which is the 2i2. Then it's got 2 inputs on it for 2 mics, 2 mics. So if you wanted to do like a podcast and have a microphone in front of each person, that would work for that. So the signals would go into the audio interface and then into your computer, into your DAW for recording. And that leads us to another important element for audiobook narration or voiceovers is a DAW. And a DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. And that is, I use Adobe Audition, but there are lots of different ones. And I have a couple of videos here on my channel where I go over a few. And I'm not really going to say that one is better than the other. There are at least one that I can think of off the top of my head, Audacity, which is completely free to download and use. Some of the other ones, you can purchase the license to use them for a lifetime straight out, which is kind of pricey. Or you have ones like Adobe Audition, where you can pay for the standalone app for, I believe it's $21 a month, I believe. Don't quote me. I think I'm pretty close. But it doesn't really matter which one you choose. It's just a matter of finding one. Most of them have free trials, so you can use a few of them and see which one you like better. Some of them have a layout that's more intuitive and easier to follow. Some of them just make more sense to you. So try out a few different DAWs and see which ones you like, and then learn it. Learn how to record, usually most of these DAWs come with tutorials, and YouTube is just a wonderful place to go for information on how to just about anything. So I'm sure you could find some other videos here on YouTube that can walk you through some of these DAWs. If you chose Adobe Audition, I myself on this channel have a lot of Adobe Audition videos to follow along with. But after choosing a DAW, another thing that I would recommend that you have is something to listen to the playback on, like headphones. Now, on my website, I have a couple of pairs of headphones on here. Just as an example, I have the set that I personally use, which is the AKG Mark II headphones, which I absolutely love. They're comfortable, which is something to definitely consider. If you're going to narrate audiobooks or do voiceovers, and within the editing process, if you're not using monitors or external speakers to listen to, the headphones need to be comfortable. They're going to be on your head a lot. And then if you go with headphones, there are 2 basic types. There's closed back and there's open back. And the closed back, let's see if I can show you. We'll see how on these headphones, actually this is a better picture here, but if I hover over it, it's going to gray it out. But there's like a cap on the end of the headphone. Or like on the ear part. The open back headphones have they're a little bit open, like they're perforated. So you get a little bit of the ambient noise or the ambient room with whatever you're listening to in your headphones. So I always say a closed back is probably better for voiceover, so you hear only what you're listening to. But some people, again, do what you feel more comfortable with, what you like better. And then after the headphones, if you go with an XLR mic and an interface, you want to make sure that you have good quality cables. Now, this is something that a lot of people overlook quite a bit, and that is the cables. That is the cable that connects to your microphone that runs into your audio interface and sometimes even into your computer. Those cables, I highly recommend getting balanced cables, because those will reduce some of the noise that is inherent in every microphone. A lot of microphones are like really self-noise, but you still have some. And even with like your electricity in your house and all of that stuff, the balanced cables will definitely clean up any kind of ambient noise in your room or coming from your mic or any of your other equipment. It helps to kind of reduce that noise. It makes for a very clean sound. Cables are definitely not something to overlook. Get balanced cables. Highly recommend them. And then, of course, the last thing that you're going to need is a computer. And it doesn't matter what type it is. It could be a laptop, it could be a mini tower, it could be a big old PC. It doesn't matter what kind of computer it is, but just the things that I would want you to think about, I should say, is fan noise. Because if the computer has to be in the same room with you in your recording space, you have to consider the noise that your computer is making, and that's typically just from that fan, right? Trying to cool down all the components inside. If it's a laptop, if you can, and you have a long enough cable for all of for your monitor and your keyboard and your mouse and all that stuff, if you have long enough cables to move that laptop outside your recording space, that's always ideal. But just keep in mind that it's going to have fan noise, and that is definitely going to be picked up more often than not by your microphone as well as your voice. Another thing I would take in consideration is that when you start to get really rolling in voiceover, and a lot of us end up doing a lot with video as well, you might want to consider a computer that has at least 16 gigabytes of RAM or more because of the processing power. From personal experience, I can tell you that I do a lot of multitasking. Right? I'm rendering a video and then I hop back into Adobe Audition and then I'm recording an audiobook and then processing those files with all my effects all at the same time. And then I'm going over to somewhere else and doing something else. My computer is constantly processing a bajillion things all at one time. So to have that processing power will really streamline your process by saving you time from having to process one thing at a time. You can process many things at a time and keep moving forward. Because when you get to a certain point where your time is very precious, the time that you're not in your studio working on X, Y, and Z, you want to be out spending that other free time with your family, right? So it really comes down to processing power as well. But again, in the very beginning, 8 gigs, 16 gigs of RAM would be fine, but just keep in mind that the more that you take on in the future, you might want to consider beefing up that computer. So that was a quick breakdown of the gear that I recommend that you use for if you want to narrate audiobooks or get into voiceover. And again, as I always say, whatever you decide to purchase in the very beginning, you're not stuck with it forever. By God, we all get into these gear addictions, right? As we go along, we want a new and better microphone. We want a new and better audio face. We want a new and better computer. We upgrade as we go along. So it doesn't really matter what you start out with first, as long as we can, get it to sound good and meet the requirements that audiobooks requires for the file standards. It doesn't really matter as long as it sounds good and it meets those requirements. You can always upgrade later. So I hope that helps. If you found this video helpful, hit that like and subscribe buttons. If you have any questions about audiobook narration or voiceovers, please leave those down below. If you want to know more about me, my work, or how I can help you get started in voiceover or audiobook narration, check out my website, VoiceOverAngela.com. Thank you so much for your time, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.